What is the necessity of forming an ego before trying to disidentify from it? I feel it's something I experience and it makes sense to me. I've always been so adaptable, I became whatever the situation needed me to be. But I didn't have a strong identity, and that caused me to feel lost at times.
Yeah, it's a very good question, a good point. Um, well, unless something goes quite wrong, we all form an ego very young. So that part's already done. But your question, if I kind of rephrase it a bit, it's around the kind of maturity of the ego. Um, and there's aspects that can be matured and need to be matured, and that's in a sense an endless process. But there is a relationship around what you're bringing up, that there tends to be somewhat of a correlation between the maturity of the ego and awakening. But it's very hard to know or see what a mature ego looks like. It's a very kind of case by case situation, because there's always aspects that are not mature, there's always shadow, there's always work to do. But some aspects seem to be very highly correlated. So that is a reason why I tend to find myself with people I talk to in this group and in other contexts pointing to what seems to be like going back to life, because there's quite a bit of a tendency to withdraw from life into a spiritual work, and that goes against the maturing of ego. So it's better to just keep that work going, keep the the work of evolving, or the work of growing, the work of um, facing life. And also importantly, there is no maturity in the ego if the deeper wants are not being lived. Because the ego, in a sense, is going to be has to be in service. But it first needs to be strong in order to be in service. Otherwise, it'll just be in reaction modes. One thing you mentioned, which is to be adaptable, that's actually can be a sign of a strong ego. Because a strong ego is permeable, is adaptable. But then you said there wasn't like a center, and that could be something important that's needed. But it'll be important to integrate what one most deeply wants. That's the question that I ask a lot, because it's what puts the energy in motion for maturing. And then if a lot of energy is going there and simultaneously into what you could consider like more of a self-inquiry, more of the spiritual exploration, then you have like a powerful synergy, instead of having one or the other, which is what commonly happens. Is There's people who are completely in the world and have no sense of an internal or a, let's say, the exploration of the nature of self. And then there's a vice versa, where there is an avoidance of life. And then that avoidance powers an exploration of the nature of self. But if it's an avoidance of life, that exploration is not going to be as deep, because it'll be in service to an avoidance. So it's not going to be fully transparent, fully honest, fully authentic. And so the best way to have this be less mired with places to get lost, less error prone, let's say, is to see them both as kind of two sides of one thing, and not kind of, how do you say, when you're not attending to like the growth of like a plant or something, like, there's a word, I can't think of it, but to not neglect, exactly, to not neglect one aspect. So I talk about this when I say growing up versus waking up. But they're kind of like two sides of one coin. Very different nature, in the sense of the waking up is seeing what is real, what is true now, what is timeless, what is the nature of self, where are all of the illusions and the beliefs. And then there is the growing up has to do with living fully to your most deepest capacities and living freely, lovingly, which makes no sense if one is avoiding doing what one really wants to do, right? So, and that's why that question is a powerful one, because it's a constant inquiry into what's the deepest energetic of what life wants through me or as me. Because that's where there's going to be the deepest traps in the way of thinking, because that's where fears are going to be stronger. That's where insecurities are going to be stronger. That's where the egoic structure is going to be more kind of stressed. When we are aligning to what we want the most, towards that. Because if what I want the most is to, I'm going to make something up, right? Is to do travel around the world, and I have a secure job, but I'm doing that because, so I end up not doing the traveling, everything, and then I'm in a process of self-inquiry, but there is a deep, true desire to know the experience of traveling the world. For the next person, it could be the other way around, right? It's traveling around the world with a deep desire of settling down and having a stable job. It applies either way. I'm making up, right? But then the person, if being in that denial with the traveling, for example, the whole notion of that trip is going to be terrifying. And there's going to be a lot of energy invested in pushing that energy away. And mobilizing energy and freeing it up to move into that deeper desire, hypothetically, for this person, is going to challenge the egoic structure to a point of maturity where it can let go to the attachment to a safe job and face all the challenges of the trip. Vice versa, you can tell the same story the other way around. The challenges of committing to a career, a job, and settling down, and letting go of the escape of travel, right? So this is a very personal thing. So there's no story narrative that's kind of applicable to anybody particularly. But it's really what one wants the most is that it has to be a question that's like alive. It doesn't get resolved.
I'm doing NLP training on subconscious repatterning, specifically about self-concept. It's about how our mind creates meaning about who we are through language and identity, and how we can access and bring out our inherent qualities, qualities we already possess but have limiting beliefs about due to language. It initially sounds like building an identity when I thought the goal was letting go of it, but in reality it's not about constructing something new. It's about uncovering what was always there but had been covered up.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, the sticky point there is that the more you develop the capacities and the talents and the potential of the egoic, mental and physical, the body, mind, all of that, the more you develop that, there's going to be forces that's going to pull into identification with it. But that's actually the only way to really disidentify, because otherwise the disidentification process effort is going to be in a resistance to a natural process. If we're not letting the energy and moving the energy into the evolution of the talents, the capacities, the potentials, the true natural deep desires, we're going to be in opposition and resistance. And so that opposition and resistance as a process of self-inquiry is going to be biased. It's going to be not from a place of truth. It's going to be partly from a place of, but it's going to be partly in resistance to a natural process. And so the way through that is enabling and being in service of the human body-mind capacity, the egoic structure. So instead of building an identity that you then collapse into, you build the identity that you transcend. There's a concept in this that's transcending and including. You can't disidentify from the body if you're rejecting it. You can't disidentify from the mind if you're rejecting it. You can't disidentify from ego if you're rejecting it. The rejection is going to create a duality. I have to be against that. I have to not be that.
Yeah, I was in that trap for ages.
Yeah, it's a common trap. Because the process of the body-mind evolution, egoic evolution, will create a lot of tensions and stress and challenges and fears and pains. And that's why I repeat a lot that is a good direction. Because we want to be able to go through that and in a sense, transition through that to transcend it. But then the waking up can happen before all of that. You don't need to arrive at a certain evolutionary state of the body-mind in order to disidentify. But there's going to be a dance there. The matter is like if we are in rejection and a certain tension or a fight with that process, all of the efforts for awakening will have like a bias. They will have an agenda, which is to avoid that place I don't want to go. And so then it's not going to be in a deep openness to truth. Therefore, it's going to be limited. It's not going to go deep. It'll reach the depth that you're allowing yourself to live in the honesty of life. And this is a very common thing. It's just the nature of how we can get, lost. And also, historically, there's a deepening in the understanding of this. Spirituality and psychology and all of that. There's a deeper and deeper understanding and integration that's happening in very recent times. But we're all it's very in its infancy. Like, this deeper understanding is still rare. But it's a lot better than non-existing, which is what it was not long ago.